إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. We continue with our presentation on Zakah. And as we did before, some of the conditions for paying Zakah, or the conditions that make Zakah obligatory upon the wealth. And then we did the types of wealth that Zakah is due from, that we will be covering in this class. And now, inshallah ta'ala, we will start with some of the basics of Zakah starting with the Zakah of gold and silver. But before we continue, inshallah ta'ala, there will be the opportunity, inshallah, to ask a question pertaining to this presentation. All the questions that you have, just keep a record of it. And inshallah ta'ala, at the end of the presentation, I will provide an email. You can send in the question and we will try to answer it to the best of our ability, inshallah ta'ala. Also, you can have an access. We will be providing the electronic copy of the PDF for those who listen to the class, or most of the class. You will be providing the PDF on the same email. You send us an email, inshallah ta'ala, requesting the electronic copy, and we will send you the PDF, inshallah ta'ala. Or if you come to the masjid and you're at the masjid and you want the email, the PDF by any other means, WhatsApp or anything, you can ask for it, inshallah ta'ala, for those who listen to most of the class. So we continue, inshallah ta'ala, the zakat of gold and silver. Now, as we mentioned, one of the conditions for zakah to be obligatory upon you is that it has to be from the zakat certified wealth. And here we have gold and silver. And the second thing, it has to reach the Nisab. And as we mentioned, the Nisab is the lease that you should own. The lease that you should have in your hand, the lease that you should own. So, for example, the Nisab of gold is 85 grams, and the Nisab of silver is 595 grams. That meaning, if you own 85 grams of gold or more, or you own 595 grams of silver and more, that wealth is zakat is due upon that wealth if it remains with you for 1 Hijri year, as we mentioned. So you have home in a box or somewhere stored up 85 grams of gold or more, or 595 grams of silver and more. You have to pay zakah on that wealth after 1 year. How is it you pay the zakah? How is it you can calculate your zakah? The amount due for both gold and silver is 1/40 times the total sum of wealth. So let's say at the end of the year, let's say you have 85 grams of gold today. After 1 year, you just 1/40 times 85. Or simple form, just divide that wealth by 40. Now there's many ways you can use to calculate the zakat, 2.5%, or as they say in Arabic, rubul ushur, 1/4 of 1/10. All of them is going to come down to the same result at the end. So we're giving you the easiest way, simple way, summarized version. With regards to Nisab, if you were to read books, they're going to give you other units of measurement that were used in the time of the prophets, that were used throughout history. We want to stick simple, just 85 grams of gold, 595 grams of silver, and these units are what are used today and what you will find if you want to know the value of your gold. So let's take two examples. Someone has 120 grams of gold for an entire year. The zakat due, how to calculate? So now one entire year you have 120 grams of gold. How to calculate? The zakat due will be 1/40 times 120. Or simple as divide 120 by 40, both you get 3 grams. This 3 grams is what you're going to give as zakat. You take these 3 grams of gold and give it to a poor person. Someone has 600 grams of silver for an entire year. The zakat due, 1/40 times 600, or 600 divided by 40. Same equation. Just making it simple. The results, 15 grams. You just take this 15 grams, you give it to a poor person. That is your zakah for gold and for silver. Now, let's say someone has 50 grams of gold and 400 grams of silver. None of them reach the nisab. Should he combine the two of them so that it will reach the nisab? So if he combine the 50 grams of gold and the 400 grams of silver, the total worth, to see if the total worth will reach the nisab, the gold should not be added to silver, nor should silver be added to gold in order to complete the nisab, because they are two different types of wealth. Two different types of wealth here, meaning they have their own nisab. They are two different forms of wealth. They have their own nisab. And due to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, no sadaqah is due on less than 5 awaq, meaning 595 grams of silver. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, no sadaqah is due on less than 5 awaq, 595 grams of silver. So if a person who has 50 grams of gold and 400 grams of silver was to combine and then pay zakah, sadaqah here means zakah. If he was to pay zakah, then he's going to end up paying zakah on less than 5 awaq, 595 grams of silver. So long as you don't have 595 grams of silver, then there is no sadaqah that is due. So you have to reach the nisab for both. Now, gold and silver, they are two types of wealth when you look at it from its from the nisab, meaning each one of them has a specific nisab, but they might be treated in certain cases as one type of wealth, and we will deal with that later. For example, if you are selling gold and silver, they are treated as one because they are both items for sale. Okay. The next thing, the zakat of money or currency. Now, money, as we mentioned before, it takes the place of gold and silver. So the nisab of money is the same as the nisab of gold and silver. So how would you know which one to use, gold or should I use silver? If the currency is represented by silver, then the nisab of silver is used. And if the currency is represented by gold, then the nisab of gold is used. Before, when money first came out, paper money referring to, you had certain country, they were backing their money, the currency, the paper money, their currency by silver, like Saudi Arabia. In the past, Saudi Arabia, their currency were represented by silver. They had silver to back the value of the paper money. And in America, for example, gold was backing the value of the paper money. So in Saudi Arabia, they would use the Nisab of silver to back their paper money. So whenever, if someone has the worth of the Nisab of silver, and as we did, the Nisab of silver is 595 grams. So if anyone had the value of paper money that is equivalent to 595 grams, that will be considered his Nisab. And similarly, the countries who back their money by gold and using gold as their Nisab, when you have 85 grams worth in money, 85 grams of gold worth in money, your zakat will be due upon that wealth if it remains with you for 1 year. But today, in current day situation, the currency is not represented by either gold or silver as in the case today. Then what should you use as your nisab? The preferred view is to use the price of gold. And I see that is what most of the organization in the United States, they are using, and in other parts of the world. And there are some scholars, they say you should use silver, but the preferred view is to use the price of gold. And the reason for that is because there are a few reasons why you should use the price of gold as your nisab and not the price of silver. The first is because the price of gold is what maintained its value from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you were to look in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we said that 595 grams is the nisab for silver and 85 grams is the nisab for gold. And 85 grams of gold in the time of the Prophet ﷺ could have buy the same thing that 595 grams of silver could have buy. In other words, if whatsoever you could have buy with 85 grams of gold, you could have buy that same thing with 595 grams of silver. They had the same value in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But today, there's a vast difference between the price of gold and the price of silver. For example, the nisab, if using gold as is shown on the screen, this here is the actual price of gold in New York. 1 gram of gold worth approximately $55, which will give you $4,675 for the worth of 85 grams of gold. Compared to silver in New York, 595 grams of silver is approximately $500. So it's a big difference. So we see that silver, it loses its price because what you can, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what you could have bought in the time of the Prophet ﷺ with that amount of silver, you can't buy it today with that amount of silver. But today, what you could have bought with 85 grams of gold in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you can still buy it today or close to the equivalent with 85 grams of gold. And one example of that thing is, for example, sheep. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, with the nisab of gold and silver, because remember both of them had the same value in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Gold and silver, the nisab of gold and silver, 595 grams of silver and 85 grams of gold in the time of the Prophet ﷺ had the same value. And in his time, you could have buy approximately with that 20 sheep. Now today, you can hardly buy, or you can barely buy 1 sheep with the nisab of silver, showing, but with the nisab of gold, you can still buy with the 5 grams of gold, you can still buy approximately close to about 20 sheep or close to that, 15, 20 sheep, depending on the type of sheep. The second reason is because zakah is due upon the rich and it is not due upon the poor. And if you were to look at the nisab of silver, which is equivalent to approximately $500 in New York, that doesn't make a person rich. Rather, a person who has $500 is poor. Most likely, he might need zakah. A person who has $500, he is poor, and most likely he will need zakah in compared to someone who has $4,675 in his bank. He is not considered somebody who is poor if he is able to maintain that for 1 year without using it out. That person is not considered poor. And there are other reasons, but these are some of the main reasons why the nisab of gold should be used when calculating the nisab for money, when using its equivalent for the nisab of money. So now how is it done? So as we know, now remember, nisab is the least threshold that you need to have in order to know whether zakat is due upon you or not. So how to calculate your nisab, how to know what is the nisab in the first place. So we know the nisab of gold is 85 grams, right? So now what you do, you check the market and see how is gold being sold. You check the price for gold. So if 1 gram of gold worth $55, then the nisab for money is going to be 85 times 55. So you to check the worth of gold in money, in currency, you just times the price for 1 gram by 85, and the sum that you have, that is the nisab for money. Currently, it is about 4,675 in the year 2021, March the 22nd, just in case this video lasts for more than a year, remains on YouTube, inshallah, and someone is listening to it in the future, they will know what time we are speaking about. So currently, the nisab for gold, this is the nisab for the worth of the nisab of gold. So it's going to be the nisab for money. So 4,675. So any person who has $4,675 or more, then he has to pay zakat on that wealth if it remains with him for a year, for 1 full year. And the amount due is the same as gold and silver. When it comes to gold, silver, and items for sale, gold, silver, and items for sale, to know the amount due, just your wealth divided by 40, and that is going to be the amount due. So someone who has, for example, $5,000 for an entire year, the zakat due 1/40 by 5,000, or in simple form, 5,000 divided by 40 equal to $125. So at the end of the year, you have $5,000 for 1 year. The end of the year, you just take $125 and give it to charity, give it to some poor person. Simple as that. Now, with regards to the nisab, as we mentioned, that some of the scholars, they say that the best thing to use is the nisab of silver. And the reason why they say that is because it is better for the poor person, meaning the poor, they have a bigger chance of getting money. And practically, this will not affect the rich. Someone who has $5,000, for example, whether he used the nisab of gold or silver, he still has to pay zakat because he passed the nisab of both of them. So this will affect someone who has maybe $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in his bank account. And at the end of the day is not nothing. For example, someone who has $2,000 for a year, if he was to pay zakat on the 2,000, out of the 2,000, he will just have to give $50. Someone who has, for example, $500, at the end of the year, he has to give $12.50. And someone who has $1,000, at the end of the year, he will have to give $25. So it's not the actual calculation, you're not going to come up to anything much if you still want to give your zakat. But to make it compulsory upon the person, that is a different issue based on the nisab of gold. Then a person who has less than approximately $4,700, he has there is no compulsion upon him regarding zakah. Now, combining gold, silver with money. As we mentioned, money or currency takes the place and ruling of gold and silver. Thus, it is treated as gold or silver as in the case of the nisab and calculating the amount due. Therefore, money is combined with gold or silver when determining the nisab of one's wealth and calculating the zakah. And this here is the view of the Permanent Committee for Scholarly Research and Ifta, Al-Lajna Da'ima, and also the Council of Senior Scholars of Saudi Arabia, or what they said, Hayat Kibar al-Ulama, and also is the view of Sheikh Uthaymeen, Sheikh Sulaiman Wahaili, and majority of the scholars that you combine gold or silver with money. If you're using silver as your nisab, you will combine it with money, any other silver that you have in your house. And if you're using the price of gold as your nisab, you will combine any gold that you have in your house or you own with the money. And we will explain that inshallah. And as we mentioned, since we mentioned gold, that we should use, that gold is the best thing to use for the nisab, or what should be used for the nisab, then everything else that we cover in this presentation, inshallah ta'ala, will be based upon gold and using gold as your nisab. So using the price of gold to calculate the nisab of your monetary wealth, you will also add whatever gold you may have to determine the zakah. For example, using nisab at $4,675. We said that the nisab of gold is 85 grams. And if 1 gram of gold equal to $55, then 85 grams of gold is going to equal to 4,675. So this is the nisab of money. You have so much money, you will have to pay zakah at the end of the year. So now let's say someone has 70 grams of gold, right? Along with $2,000 for a period of 1 year. Now 70 grams of gold by itself is less than the nisab. As we know, the nisab is 85 grams. And $2,000, as we know, is less than the nisab, because the nisab in money is 4,675. So this by itself is less than the nisab, and this by itself is less than the nisab. But since money, right? Remember money, we are considering it gold. We are using the price of gold to determine the nisab. So in other words, money here is like gold. So this $2,000 is like gold. So how do you know how you know whether or not to pray nisab? 70 grams of gold, how much is it worth? 70 grams times 55 is worth 3,850. Now you add that to the cash you have, $2,000. You have 5,850. We see that this is past the nisab. So in other words, someone who has this plus this, they have to pay zakah. So at the end of the year, they divide it by 40 and they have to pay $146.25, they give that to a poor person, or they give it to an organization to distribute it, or to someone they trust to distribute it. So now, gold and money, we said, is the same thing, because money is representing gold today, in the sense of money is the thing that we are using to buy and sell, and that takes the place of gold, because we are using gold price to determine the Nisab. So since we are using gold price to determine the Nisab, to determine whether or not you have to pay Zakah, then money will take the place of gold, and gold is considered money, and money is considered gold, in other words. Now, for those of you who don't have any gold and don't own any gold, don't confuse yourself with this. Just stick to the first example we give. And that should be the case throughout. If something is not applicable to you, you can try to understand it and learn it, because knowledge is always better. But if it's going to confuse you, just stick to learning that which is applicable to you. So if the only thing you have is money, paper money, then you stick to understand this in the simple form. You make sure you reach the Nisab for 1 year, divided by 40, and you give, and you're done. That's it. Like, for example, most people today, they are working, who have jobs, and so that is their case. With regards to gold, which some people, you might ask, what about if I have gold jewelry? Is it considered gold or not? We're going to deal with those issues later, inshallah ta'ala. So another example, someone has 90 grams of gold, right? Along with $5,000. So both of them, they reach the Nisab individually. So the worth of his gold is 90 times 55, equal to $4,950, and the total worth of his wealth is equal to $9,950. So the zakah that he has to give is $9,950 divided by 40, which is $248.75. So $248.75, that is what you give to the poor. Now, if it happened, now when you're checking your Nisab, it's important that you take your money into consideration and you take your goal into consideration to see if you have the Nisab, and don't look at it individually. Now, if both of them reach the Nisab, if your total wealth reach the Nisab and you want to calculate the gold separate and calculate the money separate, you can do that. You're going to end up with the same result at the end if both of them reach the Nisab. Now, if you have gold, right, and you want to give the actual gold in charity, you can do so. You don't have to give it. You don't have to give the money. So if 90 grams of gold, at the end of the year, you want to give gold, just divide 90 by 40. And the answer that you get, that is what you give. Divide 90 by 40, you're going to get 2.25. So 2.25 grams, that is what you're going to give. 2.25 grams of gold if you want to give the gold. Or you give the worth in money. You calculate the nisab of the worth of your entire wealth like this, and you divide it by 40, and you give that in cash to the poor or to an organization or someone to distribute your wealth. Okay. Now, someone might ask, okay, I have $9,995, right? Right now we are in Sha'ban. So in Sha'ban, I have $9,950. Let's say today, someone just gave you this money. Before today, you didn't have any money, $0. Someone give you $9,000 today. So now, you know, this $9,000 is way past the Nisab, as we said. Nisab is 4,675. The 9,000 way past the Nisab. So you start to count. You make a note of today. If this money remained with you until next year, you have to pay zakah. Now, what if I gain money now? What if I gain tomorrow, I gain some other money? The next day I work, I get some money. 2 months later, someone gave me some money. What if I gain extra money, extra wealth during the year? Should I add it to my wealth? How should I is zakah due upon it? Do I have to wait on each individual wealth to gain its nisab? Inshallah, we will deal with that. We will take a pause here, and inshallah, in our next presentation, we will continue with that topic, inshallah ta'ala. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.